In a landmark and highly anticipated decision, the U.S. Supreme Court has struck down the Trump administration's sweeping tariffs imposed under the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act. This ruling, years in the making, has sent shockwaves through the corridors of power in Washington and across the global economic landscape. The Supreme Court's decision dismantles a core pillar of Trump's trade agenda, casting serious doubt on the legality of billions in collected tariffs and setting the stage for a massive financial reckoning. The tariffs, which targeted goods from China and other countries, had been a flashpoint in global trade disputes, affecting everything from steel and electronics to everyday consumer products. At its core, the case tested the limits of presidential authority versus Congress's constitutional power to levy taxes. The justices weighed whether a president could bypass Congress to impose sweeping economic measures, or if such power must remain firmly in the hands of lawmakers, as the Constitution intended. The verdict not only invalidates these tariffs, but also sets a powerful precedent that could rein in future presidents' ability to unilaterally wage economic warfare. Legal experts say this decision may fundamentally reshape the balance of power between the executive and legislative branches, especially in matters of trade and national security. For businesses and consumers, the impact is immediate and far-reaching. Questions swirl about falling prices, job recovery, and the fate of nearly $90 billion collected from importers. Retailers and manufacturers are scrambling to assess how the ruling will affect their supply chains, while consumers wonder if relief at the checkout counter is finally on the horizon. The Trump administration has vowed to fight on, exploring new legal avenues to maintain its protectionist stance. Supporters argue that strong tariffs are essential for American jobs and industries, while critics see the court's decision as a victory for constitutional checks and balances. As the world braces for aftershocks, the battle over trade, tariffs, and presidential power is far from over. The Supreme Court's ruling marks a turning point, but the future of global commerce and America's role in it remains uncertain, with new legal and political battles looming on the horizon. The Trump administration's tariff strategy marked a radical break, not just in its scope, but in its very philosophy toward global commerce. For decades, U.S. trade policy had been guided by a belief in open markets, multilateral agreements, and gradual negotiation. Suddenly, that approach was upended. Instead of incremental changes or targeted tariffs, the administration opted for sweeping, immediate action. The move shocked both allies and rivals, signaling a willingness to use America's economic power in ways not seen in generations. In early 2025, President Trump invoked the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, a law historically reserved for targeted sanctions against rogue states or terrorist organizations. This time, it was used to impose broad tariffs on goods from China, Mexico, and Canada, citing a sweeping national emergency related to economic security and supply chain vulnerabilities. By April, the scope of the tariffs had expanded dramatically, eventually covering nearly every country that traded with the United States. Duties ranged from 10% to a staggering 145% on essential imports like steel, aluminum, and automobiles, products that touch nearly every sector of the American economy. This unprecedented use of IEEPA, described by critics as a sledgehammer rather than a scalpel, triggered immediate legal challenges from business groups, state governments, and even some members of Congress. The economic impact was swift and severe, with markets reacting to the uncertainty and volatility. U.S. importers suddenly faced billions in unexpected costs. Many businesses were forced to pass these expenses on to consumers, leading to higher prices on everyday goods, while others absorbed the losses, threatening their survival. Trading partners retaliated with their own tariffs, escalating the trade war and deepening the crisis. The resulting uncertainty crippled business planning, halted investments, and dragged down both the U.S. and global economies. Companies delayed hiring and expansion, while financial markets around the world reeled from the shockwaves. Ultimately, this aggressive policy set the stage for a historic Supreme Court showdown, one that would not only determine the fate of the tariffs, but also reshape the very rules that govern international trade for years to come. On November 6, 2025, the Supreme Court heard arguments in a case that would define the limits of presidential power over trade. Attorney Neil Katyal, representing thousands of businesses, argued IEEPA was never meant to authorize broad, revenue-raising tariffs, a power reserved for Congress. The administration claimed the tariffs were regulatory, not revenue-driven, but justices from both sides of the aisle expressed deep skepticism. Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Barrett questioned the lack of limits on presidential authority and the chaos of unwinding the policy. The court's rare consensus reinforced constitutional boundaries, leading to the decisive ruling that invalidated the tariffs and set a new precedent. With the tariffs ruled illegal, the government faces the daunting task of refunding nearly $90 billion to American importers. This could become the largest and most complex refund process in U.S. history, with businesses required to file individual claims. Legal experts warn the process may be slow and riddled with bureaucratic hurdles, especially for small and medium-sized businesses. Large corporations may navigate the system more easily, while smaller firms risk being left behind. The refunds will go to importers, not directly to consumers, so the broader economic benefit remains uncertain. For many businesses, the refund could be a lifeline, but the path to recovery is anything but straightforward. The outcome will shape the economic fallout of this historic decision. For many American businesses, the tariffs were a daily struggle for survival. Companies like Sarah Wells Bags faced existential crises, halting imports and laying off staff as costs soared. Across industries, rising expenses and shrinking markets forced painful decisions and stifled growth. The uncertainty was as damaging as the tariffs themselves, making long-term planning nearly impossible. Now, the Supreme Court's decision offers hope of refunds, but the process is fraught with obstacles and delays. For some, a refund could mean restarting operations. For others, the damage may be irreversible. The emotional and financial toll lingers, making recovery a cautious and uncertain journey. The Supreme Court's decision has sent ripples through global markets and diplomatic circles. America's trading partners, from allies to rivals, saw the tariffs as a disruptive, often hostile shift in U.S. policy. The ruling is welcomed as a win for the rules-based trading order. But optimism is tempered by the administration's signals that new tariffs may be imposed under different laws. Retaliatory tariffs and disrupted supply chains have already hurt economies worldwide. The removal of IEEPA tariffs could ease tensions, but the threat of new duties keeps global uncertainty high. International leaders and corporations are watching closely, preparing for whatever comes next. Whether the U.S. returns to multilateralism or doubles down on unilateral action will shape the future of global trade. Experts agree the Supreme Court's decision marks a pivotal moment in the ongoing debate over the separation of powers in the United States. The ruling is being hailed as a landmark, not just for its immediate impact, but for the precedent it sets regarding the limits of executive authority in matters of trade and taxation. Legal scholars emphasize that the decision reinforces the foundational principle that Congress, not the President, holds the exclusive power to impose taxes and tariffs. However, this ruling does not signal the end of protectionist ambitions within the government. Many policymakers and interest groups remain committed to using tariffs as a tool to protect domestic industries and influence global trade dynamics. The White House, undeterred by the court's decision, is expected to pivot quickly to other legal mechanisms in order to pursue its trade agenda. Among the most likely options are Section 232, which allows tariffs on the grounds of national security, and Section 301, which targets unfair trade practices. These statutes provide alternative pathways for reimposing tariffs, even as the legal landscape shifts. Legal analysts caution that the process for businesses to claim refunds on previously paid tariffs may be intentionally complex and time-consuming, potentially discouraging smaller firms from seeking relief. This complexity is likely to favor large corporations with extensive legal resources, while small and medium-sized businesses could find themselves at a disadvantage, struggling to navigate the bureaucratic hurdles. The administration's argument that tariff revenue was merely incidental to its broader policy goals ultimately failed to persuade the court, which found the justification insufficient. The justices reaffirmed Congress's exclusive authority to levy taxes, underscoring the importance of checks and balances in the American system of government. Now, attention is shifting to alternative statutes and legal strategies that could be used to justify new tariffs, as policymakers search for ways to continue their trade objectives within the boundaries set by the court. This signals that the trade war, far from being resolved, is likely to enter a new and potentially more complicated phase, with fresh legal and economic battles on the horizon. In fact, the administration has already launched new investigations into foreign trade practices, laying the groundwork for future actions and signaling its determination to continue fighting for its trade policies. Legal teams are preparing to deploy a range of new legal arguments and strategies, assembling what some are calling a fresh legal arsenal to address the evolving challenges. While the legal battle over the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, may be drawing to a close, the broader conflict over trade authority and economic policy is far from settled. As global markets react and international negotiations continue, it's clear that the story of America's trade wars, and the legal fights that shape them, is still being written. Even before the Supreme Court's ruling, the Trump administration was preparing a Plan B to keep its tariff policy alive. President Trump and his advisors are exploring alternative legal authorities, including Section 232 and Section 301, to reimpose duties. A new Section 301 investigation into China is already underway, providing a ready justification for fresh tariffs. The administration is also considering obscure statutes, like Section 122 and Section 338, to expand its options. This aggressive legal maneuvering shows the administration's determination to maintain protectionist policies. Global trade tensions are set to remain high, regardless of the court's decision. The Supreme Court's decision marks a turning point, redefining the boundaries of presidential power over trade. By rejecting the administration's broad use of IEEPA, the court reaffirmed Congress's authority to levy taxes and set a precedent for future presidents. Yet, the trade war is far from over, as the White House pivots to new legal strategies. Businesses, workers, and consumers face continued uncertainty as the rules of global commerce remain in flux. The next moves in Washington will directly impact prices, jobs, and the global economy. The debate over tariffs is ultimately about power, democracy, and America's role in the world. As this historic struggle continues, its outcome will shape the future of international trade for years to come.